Well, thank you once again for joining us as we go through What If Jesus Was Serious by Skye Jethani. And we're just moving into chapter 18 now, which is then, if Jesus was serious, then we will not contribute to our outrage culture. So really kind of, I guess, speaking to that, we seem to live in a culture that is addicted to anger. And so we did touch kind of briefly on this specific part of anger last week, and we want to explore a little bit more of that in depth for this video.
Yeah, and I think if we look at culture today, anger has become acceptable, even expected, particularly when it comes to a cause. So it's a sign of one's commitment to a cause. I'm outraged because of you fill in the blank, but I think it becomes expected.
Well, that, and I mean, it's how we get attention.
Yeah.
I think it's just a part of the clickbait culture. If we don't create some sort of outrage to rally behind, and how dare they, or they don't, or I will show you how much this is serious, or I care about this by expressing my anger loudly and fervently and constantly.
And I like the other side of that coin. I mean, if I like it, I really haven't been on the receiving end of it too much, but I know Skye in the book says he's made some controversial statements on social media. And if he doesn't show sufficient outrage, particularly Christians will write messages back to him, chiding him for his lack of commitment to the cause. And I thought that was just, well, I think it's a little ridiculous personally, but I can see how it definitely can happen. You're talking about something that's controversial. You're trying to keep a level head. You're trying to keep peace, and you make your case kind of thing. And because you didn't do it with outrage, people don't think you're committed enough, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is part of the little doodle he has at the top of this chapter, but I mean, very sarcastically, tongue in cheek, I want to say that, insinuates that maybe we are starting to suspect that outrage anger is that extra fruit of the spirit that maybe just wasn't listed or something like that. The way that we want to apply it, it seems.
Yeah, and I really thought that was kind of funny. It's so prevalent, particularly among Christians, that you would think it was the fruit of the spirit, and that's Skye Jethani all the way. It's a little bit sarcastic, which I kind of like, but I think it really highlights the point. Why has outrage become so acceptable in Christian communities? When Jesus warned so clearly, as we discussed in last chapter, the anger is so toxic to our souls.
Yeah, and I think it does. It's it probably speaks to just the way we consume media. It's so around us, and we want to be heard. Yep. And I think really to get people to react to it, we got to use. It's what's the say? If it doesn't fit, you got to use a bigger hammer.
Yep.
It's that whole idea. We got to use a sledgehammer. I think he uses that sledgehammer.
Yeah.
In our oversaturated, stimulated environment to get people's attention.
Just to get people's attention. And I think that's right. We talked about this in a previous chapter too, where we're bombarded by so many messages a day, hundreds of thousands even, over even a week. And I think it does affect our emotions, and particularly the more subtle ones. And so we, like you say, it becomes this kind of sea we're swimming through, and the only ones we get our attention are the loudest. And anger is definitely a loud one.
Absolutely. And if we don't have that anger, that outrage, it's almost like, we don't really have emotions at all. Unless,
and that's,
if they're not big, they're not real.
Yeah, that kind of explains what we were talking about just a minute ago. That's the reason, is that if we aren't outraged, then we just don't have any emotions at all. It's what comes from this constant barrage of media. And I think another reason that this might be the case is that I know we talked about this in chapter 14. Right. about our cultural significance as Christians. And I think collectively we are grieving our loss of cultural significance in the church in North America. This is, it's, I think it's real because we can see a decline in church attendance and um, cultural marginalization as Christians. There aren't the mainstream. People don't think Christians are the mainstream, and should be setting things. We're kind of pushed to the outside now as extremists, and so we're going through an actual grief process because of that. And of course, the first stage is denial. So we reject the idea of any loss of cultural influence,
Mm-hmm.
even though the signs are there. And then we get to stage two, which is, I think, where we really are now, which is anger.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that is I think that's a lot of probably truth in that, and then we start walking out again in that anger and as opposed to, and understandable. I think the grief process we've got to go through a little bit of it, but again, it's can we do this maybe a little better?
Yep.
But at the same time, can we get to that place of acceptance of okay, so now what?
Yeah. So the five stages, just if you're following along, are denial, anger, then there's bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. So
Mm-hmm.
again, if it is part of our grieving process, then hopefully we will eventually get to accepting the idea that our cultural significance has diminished as followers of Jesus, um, mostly as indicated by lack of church attendance and
Mm-hmm.
cultural marginalization. That doesn't mean we can't have influence on culture. And again, that was what chapter 14 is about. That
That's
just
right.
because this is happening doesn't mean we as followers of Jesus should withdraw from culture. In fact, we should make a even more attempt to engage it in a positive way, not in an
Well,
angry way. So,
and I wonder if like it just to help if it's sort of like it doesn't mean that yeah we maybe have no significance whatsoever.
yeah,
We do really see that it's what's the loss of cultural significance is we've lost cultural significance in a certain way
yeah,
that we've been used to, and it's like well, it doesn't mean that there's can't be significance happening if we
yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from us just taking for granted that,
yes,
culture thinks the same way we do, and they don't anymore. And that's just
oh,
the way it is. It doesn't mean we can't influence culture back into a positive way, but it's going to be different than what we're used to. And
that's right,
that's really what we're grieving is the change.
that's right.
Okay, I think Skye ends this chapter with this directive. We must look for ways to resist the temptation to join the advocates of outrage. So uh, I know two of the verses that he quotes as the supplemental readings, which we should maybe dwell on for a minute. One is James 1:19 and 20, where James says, Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. And that was kind of the theme of last chapter we talked about, that anger is, even if it's righteous anger, it's too dangerous for us in our um, current state to be able to use it effectively without hurting people. And so I really like that. We must be quick to listen and slow to speak and very slow to get anger. I like that sort of process to help sort of
Yeah,
diffuse the anger.
and I like even just the idea of where it says human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. It's again moving the idea that if we're that anger, that outrage, again, when not sort of kind of really dealt with, we're not we're not interacting with it and just really trying to figure out what's going on. That it really can start to affect more than just whatever the original object of the anger
Yep.
is, and it really can corrupt us on the inside, which as we know if that happens it's going to just find its way into so many different aspects of life and just not be good and not just not restrict our really be damaging to our own lives but damaging to the lives around us.
Yeah, and I know many Christians, even through COVID, have really got on the outrage bandwagon, and they're advocating outrage through different ways. And I think it's very clear here that we need to try and resist the temptation to join in with those advocates of outrage.
Yeah.
There's another verse he talks about here, Psalm 37, 8 and 9, where it says, "Stop being angry, turn from your rage, don't lose your temper. It only leads to harm. For the wicked will be destroyed, but those who trust in the Lord will possess the land." That's an interesting way to sort of end that verse. What does that mean, possess the land?
Well, you kind of set me up here. I'm not sure ready to answer that question.
That's okay.
I think
he's referring. I mean, this is obviously the Old Testament. So
this is
if
the Old
David is
Testament,
talking to the Israelites, their possession of the land was the land of Israel, and that was a promise God made to them.
Yeah, and I think that it is the idea of keep your focus on ultimately the faithfulness of God.
Yeah, and I think that's what applies to us today. Is that
I think if we get too caught up on what possess the land means, other than let's not worry about what the land is. Let's worry about that He's going to be faithful to do.
God keeps His promises. Yeah, that's the important principle from that. I agree with you completely. Sorry for setting you up there. I really hadn't thought that through. I
didn't even look at the notes to see some. I saw James and I thought we were done.
That's okay. But I think the advice from David here is very pertinent. Stop being angry. And again, his advice is to turn away from your rage, not walk into it, which again is the whole point of this chapter. So again, thank you all for joining in. Hopefully you got something out of our continuing discussion about anger. And there's the questions that we've prepared for you that are available for you to discuss in your missional communities, or maybe you can just discuss them with a friend. It's even helpful, I find, to go through them myself even ahead of time before I even meet to talk about it. There's a lot of good things that have even challenged me as we've been even preparing these talks and answering these questions that make me examine. I get angry probably more than I should, and even if I'm not angry, sometimes I come across angry, and I really have to watch that, and that just is something that can just be a habit. And so this has been very helpful to me. Hopefully you found it helpful too. So please join us again next time as we delve into chapter 19.